The first thing the ambassador noticed was that the human didn't flinch when the creature lunged at his face. It happened during the introduction ceremony on Catch Station, a gleaming hub of interstellar diplomacy. Every species knew the tradition. Present your apex predator as a show of cultural pride, a symbolic gesture of dominance and respect. The Eiffel delegation had brought a creature that could only be described as nightmare fuel, a six-legged, venom-dripping monstrosity with serrated mandibles and an unblinking array of eyes that seemed to bore into one's soul. It weighed half a ton and moved with a predatory grace that froze most beings in their tracks. But the human just stood there, hands in his pockets, head tilted slightly like he was sizing up a particularly odd piece of modern art. When the Eiffel handler dramatically released the creature, expecting gasps of terror or at least a bead of sweat, the human gave an expression that could only be described as boredom. The Eiffel beast lunged, its jaws snapping inches from the human's face. The crowd collectively recoiled, many averting their gaze, fully expecting carnage. Instead, the human reached out with a speed that defied reason, snatched the creature by one of its middle legs, and slammed it onto the ground with a dull thud. The sound echoed in the chamber like a gong. The predator twitched once, twice, and then lay still, its many eyes wide with confusion. The human crouched down and poked at the creature's head. "Is that it?" he asked, glancing back at the Eiffel delegation. "This is the scary thing you brought?" The ambassador, a green-skinned Boran whose own species relied heavily on intimidation to hold sway in galactic politics, struggled to find words. The Eiffel representative, a towering figure with thick crimson scales, looked equally bewildered. The creature had been a symbol of Eiffel supremacy for centuries, a predator bred to be a walking embodiment of terror. And here it was, reduced to a dazed heap by a single human. The human's name was Lieutenant Mark Kepler. He wasn't a diplomat by trade, nor a soldier in the traditional sense. He'd been sent to the Catch Summit as a last-minute replacement for a more qualified envoy who had succumbed to a case of alien food poisoning. Earth's representatives figured that Kepler's basic training, survival tactics, and knack for getting out of tight spots would suffice in an emergency. They had not anticipated him body-slamming an apex predator as part of interspecies negotiations. Kepler straightened up and brushed imaginary dust from his sleeves. "I don't mean to be rude," he said to the Eiffel representative, "but on Earth, we have things scarier than this hanging out in backyards." The room erupted into a cacophony of whispers and clicks, each species conferring in their own way. The idea that humans had predators more dangerous than the Eiffel beast was unthinkable. The Eiffel representative opened his mouth, perhaps to defend his species' honor, but no words came out. Kepler sighed, looking almost apologetic. "All right, I'll make it fair." He turned back to the creature, now attempting to slink away despite its injured pride. "You want to go again, big guy?" Kepler crouched, extending a hand toward it like one might coax a skittish dog. The creature hissed, its mandibles clicking in frustration, but it didn't move closer. "That's what I thought," Kepler muttered, standing again. He looked back at the gathering of intergalactic dignitaries, some of whom were still recovering from the shock. "So, are we done with the theatrics, or do I have to wrestle a few more pets before we talk trade deals?" The Boran ambassador cleared his throat, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "Lieutenant Kepler, while your display is impressive, it would be wise to consider the cultural significance of this ritual. It is not merely a show of strength, but a gesture of mutual understanding." "Sure," Kepler replied with a shrug. "I understand just fine. You wanted to see if I'd blink." "I didn't," the ambassador bristled. But before he could respond, a craven envoy, a lanky, insectoid creature with chitinous armor that shimmered under the station's artificial lights, scuttled forward. Its voice buzzed as it spoke. "Human, you claim to possess creatures more fearsome than this Eiffel predator. We find this unlikely. Your species is known for its fragility and lack of natural defenses. What evidence can you provide?" Kepler glanced at the craven, his expression unreadable. You ever heard of a grizzly bear? Or a saltwater crocodile? He paused, noting the blank stares. Right, probably not. Look, the point isn't just the animals themselves, it's that we didn't just survive them. We learned how to beat them. My ancestors fought saber-toothed cats and hunted mammoths with sticks. And when sticks weren't enough, we made better tools. We're apex predators not because we're the strongest, but because we adapt fast. There was a low murmur in the room. The concept of adaptation wasn't new, but hearing it framed as a survival tactic against such odds made several species visibly uneasy. The craven envoy shifted uncomfortably, its many legs clicking against the floor. And yet your species is young in the galactic sense, barely a blip on the timeline. Surely you exaggerate your capabilities. Kepler smiled, and there was something unnerving about how casual it looked. Maybe. Or maybe we're just getting started. The tension in the room thickened, the weight of his words sinking in. For centuries, the galaxy's dominant species had relied on physical might, advanced technology, or sheer numbers to assert their place in the cosmos. But the human standing before them was suggesting something altogether different, an evolutionary advantage born from a relentless drive to overcome the impossible. As the summit drew to a close, Kepler couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Humanity's introduction to the galactic stage hadn't gone exactly as planned, but it had made an impression. In a galaxy dominated by ancient, powerful civilizations, humanity was now a wild card, a species that thrived on adaptability and determination. The Boran ambassador approached Kepler as the delegates began filing out of the chamber. "Lieutenant," the ambassador began, his voice measured but tinged with curiosity, "your actions today have set a precedent, one that will not be easily forgotten. But tell me, was it all calculated? Or is this just who your people are?" Kepler smirked, adjusting the cuffs of his jacket. "Honestly, a little of both. We're not big on ceremony, but we take survival seriously. Maybe next time we can skip the apex predator introductions and just get straight to the talking." The ambassador chuckled softly, a rare display of humor from a species known for their stoicism. "Perhaps. Though I suspect the galaxy will find new ways to test you and your kind." "Bring it on," Kepler replied, his tone confident but not arrogant. "We're just getting started." As he walked away, the chatter of alien languages buzzed around him, punctuated by curious glances and occasional nods of respect. For the first time since arriving at Catch Station, Kepler felt the weight of humanity's potential. They were no longer just another fledgling species trying to find their place among the stars. They were contenders. Kepler knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and perhaps even conflict. But if today was any indication, humanity was ready to meet the galaxy on its own terms. With his hands in his pockets and a faint smile on his face, Kepler headed toward the docking bay. The stars awaited, and humanity's story was just beginning.